All right, and welcome back. Thanks again for joining us. And we are super excited about today. But before we get to it, make sure to go on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or wherever basically podcast platform you're listening on today. Give us a rating and review. Doesn't have to be 5 stars. It can just be what you're thinking, what you want, what more we can bring you. But we know you're going to love today's show because we have Kyle Jones on the show. Hey, Kyle, how you doing?
Hey, Jason, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. So Kyle and I
Great.
first connected, man, what a few years ago when I was down there
Yeah.
in Houston visiting. So awesome times, but so much has happened for Kyle. But here's a quick recap of what he's been up to. Kyle Jones is co-founder and key principal of TruePoint Capital, which currently owns just over 900 units. He's responsible for the company's strategic planning, investment decisions, asset management, and overseeing all aspects of the company's financial activities and operations. And it offers closed-end private equity funds with attractive risk-adjusted returns for qualified investors in private real estate market through diversified investment options. And for this, he's also with a global sales leader for a large Fortune 100 technology company. We just talked offline. He also has a family, 3 kids, and he's also now started a home appraisal management company because he said he just didn't have enough to do. And so that's also on the agenda for today. So Kyle, thanks for diving in here. But give us a little feedback here. Before there was the Kyle who had 900 units, what led up to wanting to do this and was the first step to get in to do this?
Yeah. So just real quick, thanks again for having me. You've had some 5-star guests, so happy to be a part of it. But
I'm glad you're one of them now. So let's do this.
so I was a guy that got turned on to real estate kind of in college just through watching the HGTV stuff. We had a lot of free time, nights in hotel rooms. I played baseball, so I was on the road a lot. We end up watching Flip This House. I mean, I vividly remember that. So early on, that got me turned on to, hey, that could be a means to an end someday. And never really did anything with that. Graduated and really just jumped right into corporate America. So before that, I was just, or before real estate, I was just living the corporate life and still am to an extent, right? Trying to climb the corporate ladder at one point, just really kind of following in my dad's footsteps. Long time technology sales individual, had all types of roles, executive level roles that he had. And so saw that and just kind of fell right in line with that in the sales capacity. And then it really wasn't until I started making a little bit more money and, started having some high commissions and just wanted to try to find a way to put it to work. And didn't know anything about stocks. I've never been interested in stocks. Still don't really understand how to even invest in that. So I don't do much in there outside of my 401k. But knew I wanted something else, and that's really what turned me back onto real estate. Started really doing a lot of research at a time when I started having some of this capital come in. But really, I would say what kickstarted and pushed me in motion was actually seeing my dad get laid off. He's at the time he was early 60s. He got more or less pushed out from the company that he was working for at the time, which is a global 100 company, and just had a really hard time finding a job. Wasn't ready to retire. Still had another 5 years or so left in him, and it took him a long time to really find something that could just close a gap for him until that retirement age. And when I saw that, that's when I really made the decision to take the action to actually start purchasing property. So I had done a bunch of research up to that point, talked to a bunch of people, networked a ton, just never done anything until that point. And then finally just jumped in and started buying, at the time, started buying single families.
That's an awesome story. And I mean, that's a hard lesson for your dad. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but just for you being that pinnacle moment, it really stands out, right? That we're all susceptible to, if we have a job, to what could happen in the other job. And you can love the job. There's nothing wrong with having a job, and it can bring a lot of luxuries into doing multifamily and others, because you do have to have a balance sheet. You do have to have some record that you actually have some proof that you can commit in some way. So going out there, and we see a lot of focus on, I want to quit my job. Well, jumping out of the job kind of puts you out into this ocean, right? And this
Yeah.
ocean doesn't really give you a background. So for your dad, I'm glad he was able to find something to fill the gap. But that was a great point for you to really just say, great, well, how am I going to avoid or really just take away the ability for someone else to make decisions for me?
Well,
So
I think too, what really helped for me is because I have, I am married and I've got 3 kids. Um, that using that as a way to say, hey, this is why I've been doing all this research. I think there could be something long term here. I don't ever want to have to be tied to a corporate job. I mean, I actually have been laid off before early on in my career. I was single at the time, so it didn't make a huge impact to me. Um, but that sold my wife, and now she was bought into uh, opening up and being more, not that she wasn't supportive, but now she was like, okay, go get it done type thing.
yeah, if you're listening and you have one stream of income, fine, that's fine, but you're susceptible, right? You
Yeah.
having the opportunity to do more. And what I like about this is you said, I'm not just going to go out there and just throw at the wall and invest in stocks and all these things that I have no idea how to do and just put money in places where it just is still risky, right? Because you're just hoping in that aspect. I've been doing the homework for real estate, so I'm going to dive in. So how far along did you go with other investments in real estate before you dove into large multifamily?
It didn't take long, because I tried to. I had, virtually, had some good years on the corporate side, so had some bonuses, had some money saved up, but went out and bought a few homes all at once, kind of thing, and it
Mhm.
just it overworked me big time. I mean, because we were trying to rehab them and everything too, and it was the flipping strategy, and then I really sat back after those were done, and was like, this is not scalable.
Yeah.
At least what I could have handled at the time. So that's really when I started looking at multifamily, and I was already doing some homework on it prior to that, just
Mm.
because I was trying to learn all aspects, even shopping centers and you know hard money lending and things like that too. So I was looking at everything, but then really just kind of focused and honed in on multifamily. Started with buying a small one, just using our own capital, and now slowly built up to the point where we're raising capital, and that's really all we focus on now is raising private capital to purchase large multifamily.
Yeah, and that's amazing. We have a similar story there is that we wanted to get back our time because, our family businesses, we were so busy that we wanted to really find a way that we could accompany that with something that was going to take our time. And then we started flipping through the airplanes. Well, and it occurred to us, well, we just gave ourselves another job.
Yeah,
And that was leading us farther away from that destination point. But you have to take that leap into it to find it out, right? Because learning about it from every step, and you'll see people, even our meetup, and they come meet up to meet up to meet up. And I say, guys, you got to go out there and use it, or it's just a waste of you showing up tonight, because you may think you like this and learn everything about it. And the first day that you're out there flipping homes, you realize you hate contractors, or something else occurs and everything else from that point, or you have everything just in one property and it's either
yeah,
money or no money with that. And you may find that it wasn't, but just reading and learning for a full year, you have to implement. So you get into this
totally.
first property here. Now you're raising funds for others. Talk to us about the first large one. What were some of the steps to find it, to build the team, and to get it done?
Yeah. So my strategy, even still to this day, for finding deals is nothing unique. It's just building relationships with brokers. I use my corporate sales life to, the way that I build relationships with customers to sell our products. I take that same skills and just try to focus on building rapport with brokers as well. So
Hmm.
but that's really what I did to transition into the larger multifamily. So I did the whole, looked on LoopNet, found the brokers in the market that I was interested in, and just flew out there. I think that's a big part of just building immediate rapport with a broker that especially is in another market, where you just show up and you're talking to them face to face versus just somebody behind an email or on the phone. And so, of course, the deals that I was going there that I used to go out there to look at on LoopNet, they weren't anything special. But when we went back to his office, we sat down, the whole day. And for the next 2 hours, we were just going through his pipeline in a way.
Hmm.
and, things that they already had kind of under their own, commitment letters with the sellers, they're going to sell them. But they didn't have all the information ready. So I'd get like pieces of the financials, and he gave me about, for 7 properties, gave me financials on 7 properties that he hadn't
Wow.
listed yet. I basically said, hey, you're, right place, right time. Here's all these. And one of those was the one that, it was 56 units. And that's the first one that we raised capital on.
See, and that's an awesome story right there, because people would say, well, you got lucky. No, you were prepared and you went in there and you did something, right? Because I'm sure that broker gets like literally 30 calls a week of people who want to buy properties. They'll never come to the market, and he may not hear from 29 of them again. And the one who's just trying to do phone calls, well, he still doesn't know if this person's real, right? It could just be somebody who's on somebody's team who just calls, and they're never really going to make an offer. They're just fishing. And brokers, I mean, let's be honest, they make money on really selling properties. So they have to find who's going to be the right person to put the time into. So you going there, it really just solidifies that, right? And it steps up, and you walk out with 7 properties to look at. One, you can actually go on there. And it's funny because brokers won't have anything, and all of a sudden you're coming to a market, and then there's 7 properties they have, or 5 properties they have. It always happens like that. So, take what Kyle said here. There isn't magic, and there's no unicorn in real estate. It's just doing the steps. And so many times we're looking for the easy way, right? Like multifamily. I hear everybody talking about like things like Airbnb now. It's like, well, we'll just focus on the process. If you can do Airbnb later, cool. That might be a cool context to add in, but don't just focus on that just because it seems like some unicorn.
Yeah, totally. It's the basics. It's just that, stick it to the basics. And really the core of how you would treat another person is no different than how you would treat a broker. Somebody that you were trying to build a relationship with, your neighbor or somebody. You're going to follow up with them. You're going to check in and see how they're doing. Use those same skills and basic skills that you learned, in elementary age to, just treat people the way you want to be treated, and follow up and act interested if you really are interested in getting out there and doing deals.
So talk to me about that 56 unit, exciting property, right? You get into it, you're ready to go. What'd you do with it? You still have it? What's the process?
So we're actually in the process of selling it. Just got it under contract this week, as a matter of fact.
Awesome.
But yeah, it ended up being a little tougher than anticipated, just because we had to evict quite a few people that was not, we weren't prepared for initially going in. Now the good part about it was, when we were placing people back in the units after renovations, because it was a light renovation plan, 56 units, you could turn that over pretty quickly, year and a half. So that was the goal. But had an influx. I mean, we took occupancy down to 50% within the first 3 months. So 56 units, 20 plus units. And when we were placing them back in, though, we were putting them in at our year 3 projected rents.
Oh, awesome.
So we had a good story to tell our investors. So it was like, hey guys, we got to hold off on these distributions for a little bit, but here's the good news. We're creating immediate value. And, when we can get through these and place people back in there, it's going to be humming. And, sure enough, that it took about 6 months or so before we could build occupancy back up to 90+%, and ended up hanging on to it for, some time, just letting it ride out. Another 50% of the units were longtime residents. And so we didn't want to force them out necessarily, but as, the people who were laid and, consistently, we started non-renewing them so that we could turn over their unit. But yeah, and then, now here we are, fast forward, we put it up for sale, and we basically, we bought it at 30 a door, and now we're selling it at close to 50. So
cool. What a good story right there.
Yeah. It's, just doing the basic blocking and tackling, but there were other lessons learned in that, and just how to deal with a bad property manager. Cause the property manager that we got in there too, initially they did a good job getting the wrong people out, but they weren't staying on top of the project plan. They weren't turning units fast enough. So we just kind of had a lot of dead time in there.
Got it.
And, just got somebody who was more capable to come in there and do, a number of units all at once versus just, focusing on turning one unit every 4 weeks is kind of what they were averaging.
Yeah,
So
with 20, 25,
yeah.
28 units on the side. So talk to me about if you started this property over again with the, the vacancy uptick right there. Is there anything you would have done differently, or just for a learning lesson for someone going forward that may come in there and not expect the high vacancy, and it just happens, right? You're taking on 50, 100, 200 people who were not your tenants. You didn't screen them. You're just literally
Yeah.
walking in, right? So can this happen? Yes, it's going to happen. It just, how do we prepare correctly for it?
Yeah, I think the first thing is probably just raising up additional capital, a little bit more, maybe 10 to 15% more. Even if it's going to affect the returns, 10 to 15% more is not going to affect them that much more. But just having a comfortable reserve account set aside, because what we encountered was we actually were using a bridge loan, and it's on a draw schedule, so you've got to have the cash to do the repairs first, and then
Yeah.
you get reimbursed. Well, sometimes you're just caught if you don't have enough cash, or if, in that case, we went through most of our capital that we had set aside right away. So we were just kind of waiting. We'd do a bunch of units and then we'd wait, and it would take, maybe 2 weeks for the inspector to come out, and then
Hmm.
another week to get the draw request finalized, and then actually have money in our bank just to do it all over again.
Yeah,
If
and
we
that's
could have
actually a
had,
great point,
yeah,
right? Because you want to know that timeline. Like if you're working with a loan, whether it's an agency loan or if there's some kind of draw process in there, you want to have guidance of how long that takes. And trust me, you better
totally.
tack on an extra 2, 3 weeks, right? Because it never happens as quickly as you want it.
Yeah. And you got to stay on top of it too, because a lot of these bridge lenders, they're not, some of them are big shops, but a lot of them too, it's maybe a couple people that are handling their entire books as far as draw requests. So they have a lot going on, and you just got to keep following up, making sure that you're doing everything so that you're not holding it up, and then just keep following up to get your money back.
Yeah, I love that. And that just great lessons all around, right? Because on that point, and what you said earlier is that it's not going to affect returns that much. And honestly, if it does, then the deal doesn't work in the first place. So
Exactly.
you want to bring some extra capital to the table. And you see a lot of people get hurt where, especially if it is an agency loan, there's gonna be a lender required repairs that come to, and they people don't budget for that, right? And so they're coming to closing, and the lender says, oh, here's an additional $50,000, $75,000 worth of repairs that you have to make. And lots of times people aren't capitalized for that. So make
Totally.
sure you ask the right questions and go forward with that. But that's a huge home run. So really
Yeah.
congratulations on that property.
I
And
appreciate
you've
it.
done a lot more going forward. So talk to us about what gave you the next steps to really just do more. I mean, a lot of people get scared, right? They say,
Yeah.
oh, I'll try the 50, and then, okay, I kind of feel comfortable in that. And here you are in the last couple of years. Now we're up to 900.
Well, I think for me, because I'm more out on the front end, out there getting deals, or sourcing deals and doing things like that, as well as the operation side of it. But it just had, it is true what they say. Once you do one deal with a broker, the floodgates kind of open up.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened. And so I was starting to get first looks at a lot of properties. Even if they were going out to market, I was usually getting a couple weeks lead time to try to preempt the seller to not go to the full process. And that's essentially kind of what's happened. And every year it's getting bigger and bigger. And then other brokers start to know who you are too, because you start doing more deals, and they're out there doing the cold calling as well. They're cold calling owners.
Yeah.
And they start catching on to, hey, this guy's doing a lot of deals. He's buying up all these properties. Yeah, I know that property. Or they might have a story. Yeah, I was trying to get that property listed, but this other broker got it. And so
Hmm.
now it's just a gateway to having access to all sorts of deals, and just really from that point just executing on the ones that you want or that you think you could raise capital for. And so yeah.
So talk to me about the follow-up process with brokers, right? Because I'm sure people would be curious how frequent, we're not closing on properties every week. So how frequently are you reaching out just to keep in front of them?
So it just kind of depends on if they have active, like if we're talking about an active property, if let's just say if they have no properties that we're talking about at all, maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks, I'm just calling them, checking in. But if they have active properties where I know that they're talking to a specific seller, or, maybe they can't disclose too much, but they can say, hey, I've got this one, it's 150 units or so. Uh, we should have more information by X date. And I'm definitely following up with that broker more frequently, maybe even once or twice a week, definitely once a week, maybe even twice a week, depending on what kind of feedback they're giving me. And you want to balance that too, right? You don't want to be the annoying person who's just calling to call. And especially if you haven't met the person face to face, that might change the way I would follow up too. Just to be, kind of like I was saying earlier, not being necessarily the annoying person that's calling and, this guy's like, hey, I've never even met you. I don't even know if you're real, like you were saying earlier. But it's a lot different because I'll go in there and especially now when I go into the markets where we own, I'm trying to meet with every broker I can that's available so that they can put a face to a name as well. Invite them to come walk my properties, or, we'll meet at the office on one of my properties. And they love that. They love that because, you're not misleading them in any way, but they know at some point you're going to want to sell that property too. So they're very interested in taking the time to meet with you, especially if you own a couple properties.
Yeah, that's great. Great points right there. So what's the big picture for really TruePoint Capital? What are the next steps here, and what's the main focus going forward?
Right now we're still looking at a lot of deals, and we're even opening our eyes up to some other asset classes within the commercial real estate game. We've got a couple of unique things coming down the line. I've got a ground lease situation for one of my buddies. It's a startup venture, but it's backed by a couple pretty solid partners, and one of them being Texas A&M University. So, and that's just a ground lease, and then we're looking at just self-storage as well. So we've looked at a couple deals. I've got a buddy of mine that I went to high school with. He's a self-storage broker, so I've been spending a lot of time with him over the last couple of years as well. We still like multifamily, right? I think we're just facing the challenge that a lot of other people are facing, where cap rates are getting really compressed, and we want to do the right deals more so than just doing deals to do deals, because we don't have a fund or anything, so we don't have to deploy a bunch of capital. We're just listening to our investors on what kind of returns they want and what they want to see. And a lot of them are not necessarily tied to just multifamily. So it's allowed us to be a little bit flexible in what we're looking at. So
yeah, it's great points, right? They're aligned with you because you're doing the right thing. You're talking to them. You're being upfront with them. You're learning what they want. And so ultimately they're looking at what kind of guidance they can get from you.
Yeah.
So Kyle, this has been awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming on the show. For others who want to reach out, learn more about you, learn more about your ninja techniques that you're going in there to find these deals and scale so quickly, what's the best way to connect?
Yeah, they can email me directly. My email is kjones@truepointcap.com. Or they can check us out on our website. It's just truepointcap.com. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of on all the social media platforms as well.
Awesome. This has been a great show. Thanks so much for coming on the show with us.
No, thanks for having me.
And for everyone listening, again, make sure you go over to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, whatever they're calling it these days, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you're listening to this. Give us a ratings review. Tell us what we can do better. Reach out for us. Connect with us at info@yarusiholdings.com. We always love to hear from you as well. And we want to thank Kyle Jones for coming on the show. Have a great day now.